All right, ready?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another session of Synoptek's panel discussion. Welcome to the new year. This topic during our panel discussion is unlocking the 2023 digital landscape. And there has been a lot of changes in the economy, in the market, with customers. And what not a better time than to take a look at the technology outlook as it's related to many of these changes. I am really pleased today to be joined by a number of experts who are going to serve on our panel. First of all is Debbie Zelten. Debbie is the Practice Director for Custom Applications and Data Analytics. She is a PMI, ACP, CSM, and ITIL certified professional. Debbie has held several consulting and technology leadership positions, focusing on application development methodologies and solutions, data analytics, project management across multiple industries. She holds 26 years of experience in her career, and she has a proven record of collectively working with customers to identify innovative and cost-effective solutions that then, and she's also currently leading onshore and offshore delivery for many large projects. Secondly, representing cybersecurity is Chris Gebhardt. Chris has 30 years experience in the field of technology and cybersecurity. He is Synoptek's security practice leader, and he is also our Chief Information Security Officer. Third is representing the cloud dynamic is Darren White. He is the practice leader for cloud advancement. He holds 26 years of experience working within healthcare, financial services, media, oil and gas, and focuses on large digital and cloud transformations. He's advised, architected, managed, and delivered complex large-scale transformation changes. And then finally is Brett Sharp. And this is a business unit of particular interest, and that's around customer experience. Brett's a Senior Director of Customer Experience at Synoptek. For the past 30 years, he's worked with clients to define and scale team competency to deliver consistent, elevated customer experiences. And one interesting note about Brett is that he is a contributing author inside the Customer Experience Professional Association, their latest book of knowledge, which was just released in 2022. So one of the things that I want to do is, well, inside our agenda, we're going to take a look at what the market is presenting to us today. We've got some analyst research from PwC, Everest Group, Harvard, Capgemini, and Forrester. And we want to look at the philosophy in terms of spending today that analysts and our experts are seeing. And so I'll ask them a number of questions, but let's peer into a little bit of the market data first. The top illustration is something that a lot of folks might see as concerning. Enterprises are constrained by top line pressures as well as cost inflation. These organizations are struggling with declining margins, 22% year-over-year impact. But can companies afford to reduce IT right now? And in the investment in line with the margin pressures and the economic headwinds that the market is presenting, even as we follow GDP. The bottom illustration is something that was just released to us within the last 24 hours. If you see the trend line, specifically GDP, historically, IT services industry has closely followed and correlated with GDP. However, we've seen a disconnect recently between this correlation over the past quarters. While GDP has been going down, IT services has actually experienced growth. So what's really going on here? Question number one, is IT spending detached from GDP? Is the financial spending resulting in GDP, while the financial spending resulted in GDP expansion, tech spending growth did not trend the same way. IT services growth was witnessed later in Q2. And today, in a recession, we see declines in GDP, but the resilience in IT spend illustrated by that disconnect gap that you see in the illustration. Number two, therefore, is technology spend and investments being made stronger right now in a downturn? Evidence of this spend from the pandemic points towards high tech adoption, which infused cost efficiencies and productivity at the time into corporate organizations. Moreover, we're actually witnessing that growth in spend related to lagging GDP today. And then finally, are any of these pre-committed initiatives even safe right now or attracting more spend? Everest, which produced this data, concluded that meaningful investments in cloud, data analytics, customer experience, and even security come into play today, which correlates with our panelists and their expertise. Another piece of research where PwC found 90% of executives are concerned today about inflation and stagflation due to interest rates, cost of capital, and wages are still concerned. However, 82% are confident with the investments made and being planned right now across key initiatives. And then one more, you can see at the top the breakdown of IT budgets going into 2023. Additionally, Forrester Research has provided some information yielding strong investments in applications. In fact, application spend and support and services and modernization has the highest growth, compounded annual growth rate of 10.3% year over year through 2022. And IT services is making a strong recovery to about 6.3% growth past pandemic levels. So what are we really seeing in the market today? Are must-have investments and spend demonstrating strength and resilience? Is there a slowdown in discretionary spend, or organizations in wait and see? There's really two choices related to the types of spend that organizations are doing today. And this narrative consists of run and spend, which is basically short-term maintain and sustain spend, or long-term investments betting on future growth. The research from Harvard and Forrester states that companies who invest or fuel their growth during recessionary environments, are twice as likely to outperform those who do not. So inside of these transformational segments, are we seeing more examples of run and sustain, or spending with involve and more growth investment? So let's talk to our panelists and let's see what they say. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All right. The first question, this goes to Debbie. In terms of custom apps, data analytics. So what are you seeing out there? Change spend, run spend. Some companies are using this time to modernize applications, and some are in wait and see mode. What are you witnessing today?
I do see a mix of both, depending on the customers, where they're at in their journey or what they need. So the people what I do see is the companies who have invested in the modernization of the application and upgrading the technology. They do see the results. We talk about a lot of application modernization and the outcomes, and we are seeing those results from a business perspective, happier customers or employee productivity or company valuation higher because they've upgraded the technology. Those customers who chose the run phase or running and just supporting those applications, they just maintain, they don't get the competitive advantage. However, when we work with our customers in the run phase, we typically work towards enhancing those applications and moving them to help them during the run phase to actually enhance them so that they can get, so we can spend the time most efficiently to do what we can to help make the application better over a period of time during that run.
Okay. Let's swing over to cloud. And a lot of individuals have made it to the cloud, have future plans to modernize even what they have. Darren, what are you seeing today? Change spend, run spend, even attached to that question, a lot of the major hyperscalers out there have encouraged service providers to help enterprise effectively use their technologies. What are some of the key market trends that technology leaders should consider in today's age?
I'd say probably from major ask is really that controlled long-term spend. How can we control it, do more with less? So historically, probably over the last 3 to 5 years, everyone really started out jumping in the cloud with their dev environments. Then they started with their most modern applications. However, we're seeing people start to come back to this hybrid cloud architecture. So they're straddling the fence. They have challenges with managing all the data and resources, keeping it secure, but you're never going to get away with your local network access. It's always going to be a challenge, your SD-WAN, et cetera. So what we see is the edge computing. I'll give you an example. We were working with this oil company, and they wanted to try to determine where the pockets of oil were. And they would lead out a lead car, it would send out a signal, and they would have another car followed by a couple hundred yards. And that way they'd have to render based off that signal where the pockets of oil were. And so they wanted it basically kind of a supercomputer sitting there on site, so then they could adjust the drill. So we're seeing that more like with Tesla, et cetera. It's all going to be on the edge. And now how do you manage it?
Hard to talk about applications in cloud today without talking about security. So Chris, same question to you. Are you seeing organizations just keep the lights on for security? Are you seeing them actually use this time as an opportunity to bolster their security? And then, attached to this, in 2022, organizations saw a number of systematic risk: climate change, supply chain, geopolitical risk, wars. Are you seeing that these are interconnected to enterprise risk? And what advice would you give to a board of an organization to manage these risks across so many different areas while charting the path to safe business growth in 2023?
Yeah, security kind of has some unique forces behind it nowadays, as compared to maybe 5-10 years ago, with cybersecurity insurance becoming so popular now. And the insurance market got into cybersecurity probably unknowing what they were really getting into, but they have learned quickly and they've adapted. And now we are seeing a lot of customers come to us with concerns because their cybersecurity insurance provider is going to drop them or not renew them because they haven't implemented things like MFA and other security protections. So, while it's the business, we're seeing businesses both sit on the run side and stay on the advanced side. They're really being driven though by that cybersecurity insurance mode, and there's a lot. I mean, the environment has not gotten better. It's never going to get better for cybersecurity. As Darren said, the network's going to be there. You're not going to stop the internal network. It's always going to be there in some form or fashion. And so with the instabilities that we've seen, it's also made organizations question, where they really have resources in their supply chain. Is there 50% of the breaches are known to come from the supply chain? So third-party risk management and really understanding what third parties have access to, what data or supply what services to you from a compliance standpoint. Say, okay, if this business goes out of business, what happens to us? How fast can we pivot? A lot of businesses in Debbie's space saw that with the Ukraine war. Ukraine was a huge development center, and all of a sudden, this country's at war. They're being called up to defend their country, and now their projects are just sitting there idle, right? So a lot of these risks are out there, and organizations are seeing them. How fast are they attacking them? That's the question. That's where we need to bring in the subject matter experts, ourselves, our team, other teams, to come in and help them navigate these waters of what is the future going to look like for them.
That's good. There's a very interesting topic that landed on our doorstep. I think most organizations right around the pandemic. And there's been more written on the topic of customer experience in that time frame and even through now than I think I've ever seen. And what is the importance? And we've seen organizations thrive post-pandemic, and we've seen a lot of organizations fall and are trying to play catch up. Brett, this question is for you. A lot of folks might not be aware how important customer experience really is in the market today. Maybe talk about that just a little bit. And here's my question for you. The challenge of 2022, when companies lost their customer focus and rising customer expectations and a worsening economy, is this creating an inflection point for customer experience? We'll call it CX programs in 2023. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a great question. Kind of to the comments that Darren, Chris, and Debbie have talked about, a lot of organizations over the last few years, and especially during the pandemic, really have invested in technology. A lot of it's siloed, a lot of it's new innovations, and I think that's been great. The potential challenge with some of that is that as you get all of these multiple systems, multiple platforms, multiple partners out there, right, it ends up becoming a little bit harder to know where you truly are innovative, what's really driving your business, and how you're delivering value to your customers. So just to give you an example, CX is really focused on, looking at the employee engagement experience, the customer experience, and how consistent that is across channels and touch points. Recent Forrester reports that there's a downward trend across almost every industry, technology, retail, you pick one, in terms of customer experience and customer value delivery decreasing. 87% of companies believe that they offer great experiences, and only 8% of their customers agree. And in, I think last November, HBR released an article that really talked about how CEOs are really kind of losing touch with the frontline workers. So we've got this great technology, we got these great innovations, but we don't know how to pull them together, right? We don't know how to leverage them. And to me, I think that kind of is what we're seeing in the market is companies are investing in multiple tech stacks, multiple platforms, multiple innovations, but there's nobody really within many organizations that have that purview, wherewithal, or responsibility to look at how are those systems working together. And so to me, as we think about this downturn or an economic softening, this is where core CX capabilities really come into play and provide a lot of value. Because when you cut back on employee or operational costs or capital expenditures or innovation, you're actually lessening your place to be able to compete more in the market. We know that companies that focus on CX focus on those particular areas that they know will meet customer expectations and will deliver engaging experiences, empower their employees. They recover from economic downturns, recessions faster. They come out with stronger innovation. They come back with better financial outcomes and improvements. And often, as we saw in the pandemic, a lot of those innovative companies now took a market leadership position. So if I look at that growth versus or the change versus run, I'd say you would only want to focus on that change mentality, because that's how you're going to differentiate and find that competitive market advantage in the market.
So follow-up question for you. A lot of folks understand, and I'm sure you're witnessing, that a lot of companies rely on third-party business partners for delivering the components of their overall customer experience. For them, how can they influence the overall customer experience when they don't even own or manage the staff?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, many companies, Amazon, I don't know how many different, business partners they have. They have a ton. AT&T has a lot. Like in almost any big enterprise, they're relying on third-party business partners to deliver a lot of the value. So in order to do that, the first thing I'd say is you need to have a very clear vision and goals for what you want the experience to look like. How should they operate? What is the experience to go online, to go on mobile, to have a chat session. What do you want that experience for your customers? Share that vision with your business partners. Let them know it. Let them feel it. Let them know how important that is to you and how that's going to drive your business, because then they have the choice to say, here, we're going to either try to align to that, or they're going to say, here's some compromises. And then you're having a really good, kind of partnership conversation. The other part is work with them, nurture the relationship, work with them on clear communications. Two of the top big things that drive customer dissatisfaction and frustration are really the amount of handoffs you have to do from team to team to team, the amount of information available to sales agents, support agents, reps, to be a customer support, to be able to answer the customer's questions. If you are not building those integrations across those different platforms to provide that information to your agents, customers are going to be dissatisfied. So work with your business partner to give them that information that are the top customer pain points. And then I think the last part is, kind of invest in the right partnerships. If you're working with a business partner that is not aligning to what you want the experience to be, they're not delivering, they're frustrating your customers, there are a ton of other alternatives in the market of people wanting to work with growth mindset organizations, big brands that are actually doing this right. And so don't feel like you're tied to that. Look at alternatives. There are some great new technology companies that are really hungry to drive great experiences.
Good. Question to you, Debbie. So when we talk about modernizing customer platforms, probably see a lot of customers making a choice between doing it right and then maybe taking some shortcuts just to get by. Maybe it's a cost pressure. And so this one's about band-aiding solutions. Companies try to create short-term band-aid solutions for their data instead of spending money on the real solution and the long-term bet. They end up spending more on that Band-Aid solution. Give some advice on how organizations can move their management teams to bet long-term.
Yeah, so we see a lot of, when we do come in, we end up taking a look at the current architecture and the setup of their data warehouse solutions, session reporting, the KPIs, et cetera. And what we tend to see is, they've spent a lot of money and it's really not, their strategy is not mapped to their business strategy. They don't have necessarily the right KPIs, et cetera. So we work with them to determine like the business case and the return on investment, and just show the executives the value of, the spend of doing it right to begin with, right? Setting up the correct architecture, understanding what those use cases are, the KPIs that you need for your organization, and all that should map to your business strategy, so that if you're actually understanding what your business strategy is, what KPIs do you manage to those KPIs, it should be a relationship between, this is what the business needs to do, these are the decisions that my company needs to make that are usually very specific to the business. And when you actually start evaluating those KPIs and getting the data through the right architecture, and you're not doing siloed data for bigger organizations, a lot of times we see businesses doing their own thing and there's not one overall strategy. So then they're spending all these money, and then when we do have to come in with a strategy, we have to pull it all apart and kind of start all over. So, and I want to give you an example of where you can start with it, with that strategy, and the ROI that you get is, we've been able to work with organizations to really reduce their operational costs, their ability to see the data and those decisions quicker. In a healthcare company, they manage cases, and the clinicians were trying to get their cases completed in a certain time frame. They had no idea that it was taking like 11 days, and we helped them get it down to 4 days, based on the fact that they now had visibility into it and understand the productivity and the efficiency of doing that case, which then ultimately turns around their revenue. And then other companies, by dealing with data quality issues. We've helped with that because then in getting the reports, it takes so much time to be able to see what those KPIs are and understand and make those decisions, right? So those are just two different ways of, setting it up right and getting it right, and then the actual ROI that you get from doing that. And another area that we want to remind everyone, or everybody probably experiences this, is how much manual effort that you're doing to pull down all this data. And that's what happens when you do data in silos. You're pulling data from different components. Different employees are doing lots of manual effort. We've worked with companies to understand, that we count up the number of hours and of how many different people are actually doing manual manipulation, and correcting the data. And it's a significant amount of effort. And just by automating that, setting up the right strategy, right back to what I was saying before, if you set up the right strategy, set up the right architecture, you can really get value and long-term value out of setting up the right BI platform. So there are a lot of different ways. So to answer the question with back to Mike about how do we get management, we have to talk about the ROI and some of the real case examples of how you do that. And I mean, just another example is one of the CFOs for one of our organizations who was a resort company during the pandemic, who was not even getting any revenue, but he was spending 3 hours a day pulling together data, and we automated that. And it ultimately he gets his information in 20 seconds. So the value of that, and when you multiply that by the number of employees in your organization who might be gathering data, it's a significant ROI. And so we can talk all day long on these kinds of examples.
No, that's great. The first slide that we shared with those margin pressures that every company is experiencing today, whether it's the cost of their labor going up, whether it's wasted labor, that's relevant. Yeah, thank you for that. Darren, question on the cloud. What are a few underutilized cloud computing technologies that maybe folks aren't taking advantage of, unaware? And how can organizations optimize their cloud resources? Because they've probably spent a ton. They probably have already moved or planning to move, but they're not aware of what can help optimize those resources.
Great question. A lot of times as we migrate workloads from on-premise to the cloud, we typically take a lift and shift methodology and approach, and then we'll modernize after that, just to minimize change during the migration. And so for those of you who might not be familiar with serverless technology, all the hyperscale platform providers have Lambda app services, something that is going to be serverless that will allow you to horizontally scale, vertically scale with minimal impact. It will be seamless to the end user. So for example, we have one client, it's a lot like eBay, and they had roughly, let's just say, around 15 web servers that were VMs. We replatformed those to a PaaS that would allow it to scale. So you're only using what you utilize, and it'll be seamless to user. You don't have to size anymore just for those peak to be able to support all those workloads. In addition, there's containers. So containers, you're not familiar, you can leverage packages. So you'll package up your applications. If I want one container to be, traditional web app database tier, the developers can code and migrate that through the environments and make it a little bit more efficient, and you don't have to rely on operating system patching, etc. And so in addition to that is just to be able to script, automate everything with infrastructure as code. What we'll do is we'll use Terraform, we'll build out our landing zones, we'll do ARM templates for the infrastructure, any of the packages that help minimize any human error as you deploy, software throughout your life cycle.
And then from a security standpoint, Chris, excuse me, we've talked about data analytics, we've talked about cloud, customer experience. Summarize for us, if you would, any additional comments that you might have so that customers are spending on relevant investments and what matters most.
Yeah, that's a philosophy that we have at Synoptek, is especially when it comes to security. There's a lot of bright shiny objects out there in the security compliance world, but we look towards the things that are practical and reasonable, right? The things that are going to help contribute to securing the bottom line of the business. Uh, Numerous times I've walked into locations that were struggling in implementing basic core cybersecurity features and functions and protections, but yet they've got these big monitors on the wall with the, we call them the pew pew maps, where the attacks are coming in from a third party provider, and all these stats and everything on the wall. They spent 50 grand on building out this quote unquote command center that doesn't really contribute to the safety of the organization, but with those practical tools and reasonable tool sets. So, and when dollars count, let's not go with the bright shiny object, right? Let's look at the stuff that is really going to secure our organization. MFA, third-party management, as I said earlier, email security, stop the phishing, get your DMARC records up and running, right? These core concepts that, while they're not pretty, they're not shiny, but they certainly help protect the organization.
Great. So I want to give the panelists a chance to talk about the key takeaways that maybe are ingrained in some of the questions that we asked and their answers, but also any other final closing statements before we move to the audience and the questions. Chris, I'm going to stay with you.
Yeah, absolutely. The first point about the threat landscape, we're all in this together. That's one of the things that I tell our customers repeatedly is you're in a competition and your neighbors are everybody else connected to the internet. And this threat landscape is growing and growing and growing. And as we put more online, as we put more resources online, the malicious actors are growing. So we need to get organizations to be more secure than their neighbors. I know it's a horrible way of thinking about it, but really you have to secure your organization. Let the bad guys go after somebody else's organization, right? And we'll work on securing them as well. So don't reduce cyber. It's if anything, stay where you are, and come to us for examples of how we can take those practical and reasonable tools to get you more secure down the path. We follow a maturity model. We follow that maturity model in security as well, recognizing that organizations are all different. They're on different paths and they're on different places on that path. So how can we help them get further down the path? Thanks.
Good. Thank you. Debbie.
Yeah, I would just say, in combination with the cloud, modernizing applications will definitely achieve business outcomes, right? So that means, by improving your user experience or by reducing your operational cost, right? Or getting employee productivity or, just customer, better ratings on the customer because you've modernized the application, because you've made the user experience better. And then there's also cost. And the ability to add new features to the applications. These are all key points in how you will achieve those business outcomes by actually investing in your applications and modernizing them. The other point around the data is, a data strategy that maps to your business strategy will enable you to get the right KPIs to be able to tell a certain story for your business, right? To basically make sure that you're getting those data-driven decisions, and you need to, you enable just not only from the technology standpoint, but from the business experts. So it is joint efforts so that you can actually make sure that your KPIs map to your business and that you are getting the right story. So the teams work together and then develop your strategy and start implementing it. So that's really important when you're actually talking about data.
Thank you. Brett, customer experience.
Yeah, I agree and reinforce everything Debbie said, but I'd also take a bold statement here and say, I think now's the time to really, again, as I said earlier, adopt that change or the growth mindset. But I think it starts with really more executive leaders really spending time with their staff, with customers to understand the challenges, their working flows. Are they getting the tools to enable them to be able to answer customer questions and solve problems? Debbie's story where an executive spending, hours to pull a report. We've got some examples of clients having to spend 2 weeks to pull data for an executive report. That's crazy. So you want to understand those challenges and help to enable your employees and the customers. Now's the time to do it. Understand what they're dealing with. The second one is kind of a little bit of a provocative statement, but I'll put it out there. I think there should be a mental shift in how we think about enabling roles within an organization. Think of it as flipping the organizational chart upside down. Your frontline staff, your sales, your operational folks, they are the ones that are connected to customers. They are the ones that are gathering feedback. They're hearing the pain points. Let's listen, support them, enable them. They're a gold mine of information. And as you go up the organizational chart, the hierarchy, their job should be more of, let's give you the right tools and information and support you need to deliver value to customers. And then I think the third one is really around, if we know what the customer pain points are, we know what improves customers' employee lives, let's prioritize those strategic initiatives that actually we know will prove value. As Debbie said, and what we'll do is we'll be able to prove out the KPIs, the impact and the outcomes that you'll have. Financially, you'll be better off. You'll be better positioned for growth and competitive advantage out of this economic downturn. So now is the time. If you're not already doing that, this should be your key focus on where you're spending.
Sounds like such a simple context.
Oh, it's hard.
Spend time.
That's why you need advisory help on those kind of things, right?
That's great. Darren, thought advancement.
Just to add to that, I don't think any of it's easy. That's why it always helps to have the right advisor. But one of the key ones that we see as the main challenges is this IT keeping up with business needs and demand. So being able to improve that overall agility, the business wants to spin up data lake, do some data analytics. Literally, you could stand it up in a couple of days, do a POC, prove it out versus going through the old method, looking at the applications, the maximum concurrent users, sizing it out for peak performance, and then it sits idles for months. So you'll be able to have that agility and resiliency, within the public cloud architecture, and you can use that to your advantage and for overall cost savings. Secondly, automate everything. Everything that you touch on a regular basis, it's going to be repeatable. You'll hear this throughout, all organizations and functions, RPA, et cetera. We do the same thing within the public cloud. With the infrastructure as code, we have one client who wants to build out 150 servers. They'll give us the request in one day and it's done within an hour. So try to repeat that and minimize any human touch as possible. And then lastly, try to leverage cloud native capabilities. Each of these hyperscale providers introduce new services on a monthly basis. It's already integrated into a single platform. Try to leverage those to your best ability versus trying to use bolt-ons and try to use the swivel chair and manage everything. So those would be the 3 takeaways I'd recommend.
Okay. We've got a little bit of time for Q&A. There's 2 of them that have come in and I'll keep monitoring for other ones. Let's stay on the cloud. Darren, this one's for you. Thanks for your insight. Any concerns about inflationary pressures in the year ahead, now that it's relating to cloud spend, maybe modernization? That's my add to the question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most of the executives we speak to, that's a major concern. However, I think that's with the agility and flexibility of the cloud. They're still going to be able to take advantage of only the resources utilized, just like I talked about the web services. We just, that one client, we're going to see probably a 40% reduction in their overall spend versus their traditional legacy infrastructure of what we currently had. So, I think, organizations can only spend what they have in their budget and they just can't pull it from the money tree out back. So I think that helps them in the long run.
Okay. Second question came in regarding customer experience. Brett, thanks for the overview. Which companies do you feel do a great job of delivering customer experience that I could compare it to?
Yeah, that's a tough question because there are many companies that do parts of it well. But to really look at kind of the full breadth of customer experience, there are very few that have nailed it yet, right? It's kind of like omni-channel. Nobody's really nailed it, quite yet. But I think a couple good examples that I've looked at that have sustained solid CX over the last decade or more. Amazon has done a lot to really focus. They have customer obsession. They drive a clear vision. They've got a good foundation. It's aligned to their growth plans and strategies. They've got a great way that they empower frontline and staff and customers. And they've seen an increase in their stock over the last 12 years at about 5 times. And they've improved number of employees and employee engagement, probably 2 to 3 times, right? So it's a pretty solid number. Another one is that is longstanding, but is really Ritz-Carlton in the hospitality. They just have customer experiences in their DNA. They've done everything around consistency and touch points, interactions, geographies. They enable everything. Everyone knows their credo, their vision, and they really, again, they empower the people working closest with customers, the employees to be empowered to make decisions and have control. And so they actually lead the industry in employee turnover. It's one of the lowest in the entire industry by about 5 times. I mean, so just really the results stand out, but those are a couple of good examples.
Okay. One came in here for you, Chris. In regards to changing in legislation regarding breaches and security incidents with mandatory reporting to specific government agencies, can you offer any clarification on what's really happening with organizational compliance as you see it today?
Yeah, there has been a lot of change, a lot of quote unquote accountability legislation coming out that we're seeing requiring reporting of a security incident within 72 hours. For example, GDPR in Europe was the one that really put that on the map, and everybody else has been picking it up, including here in the US and the States. So it comes down to the organization to make some really careful decisions as to who inside the organization can declare a security incident. Because as soon as an incident is declared, you have all these triggers that start running, right? You have these 72-hour triggers. Most of the time when you dive into the legislation, specifically with GDPR, they have this phrase afterwards that says, within 72 hours of becoming aware. In Europe, they took that 3-word phrase and put an entire document, like a 25-page document behind what those 3 words mean, given examples and everything else. So our belief has been things are security events until we have a designated official, potentially a corporate officer, who can say, we're declaring this an incident and we're moving forward with it as an incident. That doesn't stop how you mitigate it. It doesn't stop how you can control it and remediate, right? But it does start triggering these legal aspects. So getting your general counsel involved, getting counsel involved, getting your cybersecurity insurance company involved right away are the key things to look at when dealing with these legislative, I don't want to say snafus, but they can certainly turn that way really fast on you. But if you don't report it and an organization, a government agency finds out about it, and your team, security incident is so, everyone is used to it. We all call it security incident. It's security incident. We need to change our terminology, right? We need to fall back on it's a security event until declared a security incident.
So with that, I want to honor the time limit. I want to thank each of our panelists. What a wealth of information that's relevant in today's economy and how customers are navigating headwinds, but also taking advantage of this time to come out stronger when the recession and the economy lands, and even in the face of layoffs, there's still a legitimate means that companies can become more efficient and take advantage of advisory-led services. So thank you all very much. Our contact information is there on the bottom of the screen. If there's anything that you would like to know more of, or if you'd like to talk to any of our panelists one-on-one, please feel free to reach out to us directly. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.